Welcome to another episode of the Hot Topic Podcast with your host, Patrick Clounch.
Wow. Incredible. And just to think that was just over 7 months, right? So
Yeah.
there was a lot working there, and you'd probably had a lot working up to that 7 months. I'm sure it wasn't just a snap decision. It wasn't just
Oh, definitely not.
right. You just don't wake up on Sunday morning and go, you know what, I'm done. Maybe you do,
No.
maybe you don't, but
Yeah.
especially when you have other families to consider. You had employees that were working for you and that have been very loyal to you, and you can't just walk away from that. That's
No.
and part of the stress that comes with it. It's like, okay, it's not just me making this decision. I have to worry about other people.
The stakes are high, right? And the higher
Yeah.
the stakes are, the more pressure is there. So
Yeah.
no, I'm and again, I wasn't afraid to change things up. I needed to make a change. And if I hadn't made that change, I don't know where I'd be right now. I don't think I would be doing as well as I am. So yeah, it was a little trip off of the path, and came back to the same path I was on before, but with a new perspective, rejuvenated. And also I gained valuable experience in that 7 months working for this company. So it's not, to your point, every time you make a decision, it's not, I don't even classify it as a failure. I just say that was an experience that I had, and I gained some valuable information. I learned, I got better myself. So I think that's a win. That's not a loss.
For sure. Yeah, we all learn from failure, and that's what a lot of people are afraid of failure. I get it. I am too, and you probably are too, but at a certain point you have to realize that I'm probably going to fail at doing this, but what can I pull from it? What can I understand from this, right? And if you're listening or watching and you're in a position that you may not want to be in, and maybe you're looking to transition, just know that it's not going to be as rosy as you think it's going to be whenever you go to make that transition, but it's okay. You're gaining valuable experience, some things that you don't even realize. Maybe you meet a mentor. I've had some positions to where, a real quick story, how I got into the commercial part of our industry. I was selling automotive aftermarket car parts, retail store, just kind of grew up in the just loving cars and trucks and things like that. And the natural progression for me was to go work in a parts department, because it was as long as you're willing to work hard and you're fairly studious, it was a really easy barrier to entry. It didn't take much to get into it. I had several friends that were in the industry at various levels, so that's what I wanted to do. Fast forward, I was pretty good at what I did, and I had a gentleman that would come in quite often. This was in the early to mid 90s. A lot of people still did a lot of their own maintenance on their vehicles at that time, on Saturdays and Sundays. So I had one gentleman that I just took care of him. He waited on me, so I took care of him and did him a good job. He brought his wife in one Saturday morning. They were gathering some parts, and I didn't know this, but they were really big NASCAR fans. And we had a display of some oil, and there was a poster up there, and I think it was Rick Hendrick, Jeff Gordon, and Terry Labonte, I think. I'm not a huge NASCAR guy, but anyway, it was a nice little poster. And his wife asked me, hey, when you take that display down, can I have the poster? Yeah, sure. I didn't know when the display was going to come down, and hopefully I would have caught it. But I just happened to be there the day they were taking it down. I rolled up the poster and I put it in the office and said, hey, don't touch it. I've got it given to somebody. Okay. A couple of weeks later, they show back up, and I was like, oh, hey, guess what? I got your poster for you, man. You would have thought that I just invented electricity to this lady. She was so happy and thankful. Well, not knowing, I get transferred out of that store. I took an advancement to another store. And the way this operation worked, they didn't want to advance you in the same store, because you would be working with the same guys, and they wouldn't look at you the same. Made all the sense in the world. So I got transferred, no big deal. I'd been there for several months, and I came in from my days off, And one of my colleagues said, "Hey, a guy stopped in and he dropped off his card for you." Well, that generally didn't happen in that part of the industry. And I was like, who'd be dropping off their card? Well, lo and behold, it was the guy that I used to help at another store. And he said, "Hey, I don't know if you're interested or not, but we have an opportunity as the parts director for what was the Thermo King Corporation." So I got into transport refrigeration. But little did I know, just by doing what I did, enjoying what I did, taking care of a person, how far it took me. It brought me to this industry. And I had really no knowledge of what else was out there. I was just kind of, like most people, you're just chasing a path and you're just trying to go down the path and advance in that path, not knowing that you affected somebody that could affect you. So you never know. You meet a mentor, you meet someone that can help you along the way. Sure.
And you never know when down the road it's going to pay back, right? Like when I if you remember when I told you my story, kind of how my career progressed, when I left manufacturing, went into distribution, I was working for a gentleman. He was our operations manager. And then they shut down all their corporate stores. I went and started my mobile repair business. And then when we sold it in 2016, I had moved provinces from British Columbia to Alberta. And I get a phone call one day and it says, "Hey, Jamie, are you in Alberta?" I said, "Yeah." "You in this small town?" I said, "Yeah." He said, you ever seen our truck parts store there called Arctic Truck Parts?" I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "We got a salesman who's 70 who wants to retire. Do you by chance want to get back into the heavy duty parts business?" Well, it was the same guy, just at a different company. So, and that was 7 years later. And it led to me getting back into heavy duty parts. And as you know, that led to everything I'm doing today. So, one of my early mentors, he always said, he goes, "Never burn a bridge with people. Always conduct yourself to the highest degree of professionalism possible, even if it's not going well, because you just never know. You just never know." And I think that's a good rule of thumb anyway, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated. And principally, that does pay off more times than it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. You can almost look at it as the iceberg theory. You're only seeing 10%. You have no idea the other 90% that someone that, could be treating you unfairly, badly, however you want to phrase it. I always, and I don't know when I came up with this epiphany. It was several years ago, but I always try to figure out, what is it you're really trying to tell me? What are you struggling with? Because we all have people that we interact with, and they'll just go off the rails, and it's so unexpected. It's like, I didn't see that coming, right?
Yeah.
Well, I try not to. I'm human, as we all are. You try not to hold that against the person. What you try to figure out is, well, why did you treat me that way? Why did you say it that way? That's uncharacteristic of our relationship. And then later you find out that, they're going through some tough times. It may be a health issue. It may be a parent or a child, or maybe their marriage or whatever. And then at that point, it's more about, okay, well, how can I help? That was so uncharacteristic of you, and I value you as a person. Okay, let's scrap the business, scrap the industry, scrap the fact that we work together. What can I do to help you? And I think that carries a lot of weight.
That makes me think of a couple things. First of all, the person whoever said it's just business, they don't know what they're talking about. Business is one of the most social activities you can do. And we are a social creature. Like we live in social hierarchies. We're humans are very highly socially motivated. And there's a lot going on at a psychological level, at a subconscious level, that most people are largely unaware of. But business is a highly social activity. So that's one thing. The other thing, what you just said, made me think about is that people will tell you with their actions everything you need to know about them. And it's typically a good rule of thumb to listen to what people say and watch what people do. Because if they're telling you, or they're, through their words or actions, one thing or the other, you should probably accept that as being true. And so if they're telling you they're an a-hole, they're probably an a-hole.
Mhm.
If it's uncharacteristic and it's out of the blue, then you're right. There's probably something else going on there, and you can dig a little deeper. But I'm a big fan of that, and when it comes to helping people, like I like to help people who are giving it everything they got and coming up short. And when it comes to dealing with people, I like to give people, I like to approach things the way I kind of approach things, which is I'm going to approach every person with the idea that they have intrinsic value and that they're probably a good person. Unless, of course, their words and actions dictate otherwise. But unless that happens, I'm going to approach it that way. I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt because I've made some big mistakes in my life. I'm going to make some big mistakes in the future. I know that to be a fact. And God, a little grace for me has gone a long way to help me and not to have total disaster and total failure in my life. And so giving that grace to other people, I think that's an appropriate way of conducting yourself, obviously on a personal level, but even in a professional level.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can all learn from that. Giving a little grace, because we've all been given grace when we didn't necessarily deserve it.
Yeah.
We were the a-hole, and we were acting right. But somebody allowed all that to clear out of the way. And then our egos are probably the worst and best things about us. You let that ego get in the way, and it's not until you can graciously give that you're able to really grow both professionally and personally. When we as men can look and say, Jamie, you know what? You were absolutely right, and I was wrong. I'm sorry for the way that I acted. It's really that simple. It's not that you expected it, but to hear those things carries so much weight, because now the law of reciprocity, because I was willing to do that when you mess up and you're willing to do that for me, now it's taken our relationship to a whole new level. And now we can really trust each other, really entrench within each other. And then, things are generally better in groups. The two of us can grow at a better rate than one of us can individually. Yeah, for sure. So that's a good learning lesson for sure.
Yeah, and bringing it all the way back around to this whole idea of starting a podcast or creating content in media to further your career or to pursue a business objective, there's a level of responsibility that comes with it too. And there's a level of transparency that's required, but there's also a higher standard that gets set, because as soon as you're the person up there saying the thing, then everybody wants you and expects you to live up to that thing. And that's something I think when you're young and you're considering your options in your career, I highly suggest that you look at creating content. But I also highly suggest that you consider the implications of what that means when you put yourself out there. There's security risks you have to consider, but there's just that higher standard of behavior that is expected from someone who is even what we would call like a micro influencer. So you don't have to necessarily be a huge public figure to have that apply to you. Even if you're a micro influencer, you've got a small community that you're working with, you are in some respects, you're taking the lead and you are setting out there a set of expectations for others. Well, you have to hold yourself even higher, a higher level of accountability and kind of overshoot that. Otherwise, you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're being hypocritical. That'll kill your career and kill the momentum pretty fast. So there's a lot to think about with this. And that's going back to kind of weighing things out and really learning and understanding from others. This thing I want to do, what is the cost? What are the steps I have to take? What is this going to take to be successful? And what do I have to think about that I'm not thinking about? And that's why it's so good to look to mentors. And that's why I really encourage people to do more mentoring. I've benefited from a group of mentors over many years. I kind of put them all together now into a composite mentor because they all added something and taught me something valuable. And I use a lot of those principles I learned from those, what I would consider giants of the industry who went before me. to guide me today. And now maybe we're moving into that position for others, and it would be really great if we could help them avoid some of the problems that come along with doing this thing that we do.
Yeah, for sure. And as you become more of an authority, uh, uh, it's very important that, yes, one of the things that really helped me early in my career, I didn't journal. I just didn't do it. I was like, why write it down? I don't have time for that. I don't want to make time for that. Right.
Right.
But as I got older and you start journaling things and you start putting things on paper where you can read it and you can study it, sometimes those thoughts that you put on paper don't make sense. It's like, that's not really who I am. I don't really want to go down this path. And it gives you the opportunity to scratch something out and start over. Yeah. Whereas if you verbalize whatever it is you verbalize, even so, you said something earlier when we were younger. Yes. For those of you that are younger, the next generation that is coming up, we are going to give you a little bit of leeway on the way that you act or the things that you say or the things that you do. We're going to chalk that up as, well, they really don't know what they don't know. But if you continue to go down that path, you can very easily find yourself on the outside of the industry looking in. Yeah. Because we're only going to stomach so much as humans. And, without that mentorship, maybe it's somebody you put your arm around and say, hey, let me help you out. Maybe it's somebody you've got to push away because you just, whether it be a trust issue or whatever it might be, that may lead to that, which leads me to this question for you. On the sales side of my part of the industry, we have a really hard time of getting the next generation excited about selling trucks or equipment or whatever it is. But I have always noticed on the backside, whether it be parts or service, fixed ops, if you will, that's where you start to see a lot of the younger generation kind of funneling towards. What are you finding on your side as far as our next generation? Is it still very healthy? Is it like on the sales side? It's a struggle. It really is.
Yeah, we certainly don't have an abundance of young talent coming to our industry. And it's really disappointing because despite the fact that Gen Z, as the Wall Street Journal coined, they said that they're the tool belt generation. And that's because we're seeing record numbers of the Gen Z group moving away from standard 4-year degree university education and going into trades. But we're losing them to the electricians and the HVAC and the plumbers, and we're really struggling in the heavy duty industry to bring in people. And I did a small study because I wanted to understand how people came into the industry and versus now how they come in. And back in the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s, most guys that came into the industry were actually, they started in automotive and they were building hot rods. And they were into muscle cars, and so and that led them to maybe automotive parts. But then they got married and they started having children, and they needed to make more money, and so they transitioned over to heavy duty parts. And it was the same with I found with the technicians, and even some of the drivers. Back in that time period, the baby boomers, that's how they got into our industry, because they had a deep interest in something mechanical, automotive. They needed to make more money, so then they transitioned to heavy duty. And then you move into the Gen Xers, and it was kind of a split. And certainly even the Gone in 60 Seconds movie, and also the movies with Paul Walker, where they've made like 10 of them now.
Fast and Furious.
Those movies actually helped the next kind of the youngest Gen X and the oldest millennials to be interested in automotive and kind of follow that similar path. But we were starting to see a real drop off in that, because we also saw the rise of technology, and we all had Nintendo consoles, and we got into computers and gaming, and so there was the tech industry became very, very popular. I know when I was graduating from high school, everybody I knew was going into computer sciences, and it's one of the reasons actually I joined our industry, because I thought about supply and demand from economics. But then you move into the next generation, and it's like we fall off a cliff, and that's really concerning for our long-term future, because we are just not bringing enough people into the industry. We are losing far more than we're gaining. And this is creating a lot of pressure on the entire supply chain. It's also creating a lot of pressure on the service side of the business to keep commercial vehicles going. And that's really concerning when you think about what is moved around the country on these trucks and trailers, right? Medicine, food, energy for your home and your vehicles, all the kind of fundamental building blocks of keeping you alive.
Yeah.
Never mind your next iPhone and whatever else you're buying. So, yeah, it's been a real struggle to get people to see. And, I think one of the other issues with the trucking industry is that other than maybe like a truck on the highway that you had to pass, the industry is invisible to most people.
Mm-hmm.
And for like 30 plus years, no family was sitting around the table at Thanksgiving going, you know what? Johnny's going to be a truck driver. We're so proud of him. Or Johnny's going to be a repair technician. Or Johnny's getting into the parts business. Or Susie's going to go down that road. They were like, well, they're going to be doctors and they're going to be lawyers and they're going to university and they're getting their business degree. That's what families were pushing their kids towards. And, understandably so. We are not seeing a fast enough swing back to the trades and viewing the trades, especially our industry, as being a really great career where you can make a lot of money, but you can, more than that, you can have an amazing career working with awesome people and contributing to something that's truly meaningful. That whole thing has been missed by an entire generation, now moving into maybe 2 generations. So it's a real challenge. And I think we all have to play a part in introducing the industry to people. Like I know personally in the last couple of years, I've gotten 2 journeyman parts people, they're now journeyman parts people. And it's because I encouraged them when they were coming out of school to join the industry. And I try every day to do that. And I think every man and woman who works in this industry needs to be spending some of their time each and every week trying to get parents and their kids to see our industry for what it is and to overcome some of the negative perceptions around our industry. We're not what we were 40 years ago. This is a high-tech, exciting, fast-moving, fast-developing industry with huge upside and opportunity, but I don't think we've done a good enough job advocating for that.
Yeah, it's just not. So, like on the sales side, I tell this all the time. If you have someone that wants to get into sales, are they going to want to sell BMWs and Mercedes Benz or Ford Super Duties? Mm-hmm. They're going to choose the BMWs because in a social setting, it's much easier. If you ask me, well, Jamie, I sell BMWs. Oh, wow, really? Okay, I really love the 7 Series, blah, 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 whatever. I bought, whatever. Hey, Pat, what do you do? Well, I sell trash trucks.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Anyway, and then, we move off the subject because we don't want to talk about that because generally people don't know anything about it. Now, there's one caveat. Let me jump in here, and I'm gonna pitch your side of the industry, guys and girls. If you're out there and you are wanting to become a technician and you're looking at the automobile industry, just know that your lifelong or lifetime in that industry is going to be short. Why? Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't think about this. When you're working on a car, you're bent over 90% of the time. Guys and girls, if you want a lifelong career, get into heavy duty because you're standing up most of the time. You're not on the floor a lot of the times. You're not crawling under a truck. Typically, if it needs to come off of the truck, there is something heavier than you pulling it off of the truck, whether it be the turbo, the transmission, the engine, whatever. You have help, and generally you're working at a level to where you're standing up. You work on cars, a lot of times you're bent over. You're just going to have a short shelf life. Anyway, little snippet from what I've learned in the industry. Get into heavy duty as fast as you can because you'll last longer. You really will.
Yeah.
And the parts side. The parts side is very lucrative as well.
Oh, absolutely. The parts side of the business is great because it's not as physically demanding there's no competition. There's zero competition if you're a young person who wants to come. If you show up and you actually work, and you take advantage of the mentorship and leadership that gets presented to you, I guarantee you will find a pathway and a career in this business, because I'm telling you, for every 4 or 5 people who have 30, 40, 50 years of experience and are about to retire, there's maybe one in the wings who's kind of under them training up. And so there's just nothing but opportunity. So that was true 25 years ago, 27 years ago when I started, but it's even more real today. And on the sales side, the other thing I would say, if you by any chance find this podcast and you've made it this far in the conversation and you're not from our industry,
thank you, by the way.
Maybe you've got a job that you're not too thrilled about. Maybe you're in the retail sector, or maybe you're in another sector, and you just don't see a lot of upward movement in the industry. And if you are results driven and social, and you move at a quick pace, and you're more likely to want to delegate than you are to do it yourself, those are the kind of the characteristics, the core characteristics needed for a good business development salesperson. So maybe you should consider sales, but don't go into a sales career where you're going to have just a red ocean of competition. Go find the blue ocean, the wide open opportunities. That's our industry. Mm-hmm. There is so many opportunities, even despite right now the industry being kind of a little bit in a down position. That cycle will come back every time, and there's nothing but opportunity. So if that's you, reach out to one of us, and we've got lots of contacts that we can put you in touch with, and there's probably an opportunity there.
For sure. Yeah. And let this sink in. For those of you that are watching and listening, to Jamie's point, if you like to get out and you're personable and you want to pursue a career in sales, whether it be on the light to medium duty side where I'm at, the heavy duty side where Jamie's at, I promise you, if you will dedicate yourself, you can make a really nice 6-figure income every year and be able to do it for as long as you want to do it. You can look, there's evidence. There's people that are in their 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s that have been doing this for so long that it's so lucrative they don't want to leave. It really is. I don't want to say
and they enjoy it, and they enjoy it so much. They just love it. So
right, because they have a lifetime of customers that keeps them coming back. You can be having a crappy day. You pick up the phone one time or see your phone, it could be one of your best customers and that you just have a great relationship with, and it completely changes the makeup of that day. One customer. And that's what our industry does. But you're right. It's so obscure that people don't want to talk about it. They don't know anything about it, but it's so lucrative. Guys and girls, there is opportunities here in this industry. You just have to be exposed to it. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. Your podcast, my podcast, that's what we do. We expose people to things that they may not necessarily see or know anything about.
There's a tagline. Patrick and Jamie, they expose.
We have to be very careful with that one, right? Yes, we could use that for sure. Yeah, man. Lastly, I know you're super busy, but that's really what I wanted to talk about was how do we get some of our next gen, our youth into the industry. But I wanted to ask you, I saw on your website, be heavy duty, your motto. Man, I love that. Tell us, how did you come up with that?
So I started to work with a individual who was a senior consultant for me. And one of the things we kept saying to each other just in conversation was, oh, that person, they're heavy duty. That person, they're not heavy duty. And I started to think about that. And I said, well, what do we actually mean when we say that? And I started to notice in our industry that there's a set of characteristics that really make you fit into this industry. And I realized that those characteristics are very similar to the characteristics of a heavy-duty piece of equipment. So the word heavy duty was coined in 1914, just at the outset of World War I. And you can imagine the Industrial Revolution had been going now for a while. They're starting to develop more and more technology. And in order to withstand what you have to withstand in modern warfare, they started to build heavy-duty equipment. So it started with tanks and things like that. But then, of course, that all spun into a commercial industry that rose up from that. And, if you look at the definition of heavy duty, it talks about being resilient. It talks about being built for extreme conditions and being able to operate in those conditions. And I realized that that really translated well to the type of characteristics I saw in people who I would classify as heavy duty. They're resilient. They're tough. It's almost like they're just built of something different. And when times are really tough, these are the people who are showing up and they're withstanding the pressure and the difficult circumstances that they're facing. And that also shapes, when you have that, whatever that X factor is, that also shapes the type of person you are, right? They're gracious, they're kind, they're generous. They see the bigger picture, they're contributing to something larger. All of that starts to come together into this idea of being heavy duty. And so for us, it's more than just a tagline. It's more of like a way of life. It's a type of viewpoint and an approach to life that is different than I see in other groups. And that is something that, as that idea emerged, I realized that really when I had dedicated myself to supporting the heavy duty industry for the reasons I laid out earlier, that it's the backbone of society, that people's lives hang in the balance, and that our way of life is connected to the success of this industry, and then I kind of coupled that with this concept of being a heavy duty person. You don't have to work in the industry to be that kind of person. But it is, to me, it's a bit of a calling. It's a higher level of being. It's maybe an impossible dream that you're trying to or aspiration that you're trying to reach for. But in the act of doing it and of trying to develop those characteristics, I think it makes you a better person. So that's what being heavy duty means to me.
I love that, man. That is awesome. You're absolutely right. We, I spent some time on the heavy duty side, predominantly on the light but certainly all in the commercial, vocational, utility side of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can kind of figure people out. And it's not that we're stereotyping. That's not what I'm saying at all.
No.
You just know from experience what a successful person looks like. Regardless of what their background is, they either can do it or they can't do it. And a lot of times you can pick them out pretty quickly. Obviously we have a lot of retail people that want to slide over into commercial sales. And the reason that they want to do that is because they like the automotive sector, but they're tired of working bell to bell, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever it is. They're missing out on their family. Kids have, events after school. They're not there. They like the opportunity to work a Monday through Friday, have some evening hours off to a family, and let's face it, the money's a lot more lucrative than it is on the retail side. But a lot of those people coming in just come in for those very reasons, not necessarily because they want to learn more about the commercial sector or the vocational utility sector. They just want to basically sell cars Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. That's the reason they get in. And very quickly, they figure out it's not for them, because when they have that commercial customer that walks in the door, or they pick up the phone or whatever it is, and they start asking questions about something they know nothing about, they quickly figure out I'm probably better suited to get over here on the retail side, even as much as I don't want to. That's the struggle that we go through, is because, again, it's our industry is very obscure. It's tough to be able to bring that talent in. But
Right.
I like your thought of going out. Hey, when you see a next gen, let's call it, put a word in. Hey, have you thought about this? Have you, do you know anything about it? It can be very lucrative. That's awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah. My mentor said to me, how do you get 20 years experience in this business? I was like, I don't know. He goes, come see me in 20 years. So I phoned him on my 20th anniversary of being in the business.
That's funny.
Yeah. So in some ways, learning it, there's no shortcut. But when you see someone who shows up, they're competent, they're driven, they're resilient, that just shows up differently. And so when you see those core characteristics, that's your cue. Send them over to Jamie. He'll get them in the heavy duty industry.
There you go. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. Well, brother, I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I want to extend an invitation. Let's do this again. whether it
That'd
be
be
on
great.
your platform or mine. I think we've got a lot that we can really share and help. Again, get some exposure to our side of the industry, and maybe someone along the way might want to join and do what we've done. It's very lucrative, and I think people you can have a really, really long, nice career doing what we've done.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely, Jamie. Until next time, brother. We'll talk with you soon.